19-year-old Susan Dassinger from Elmore County spends several hours grooming her prize steer, JR. She's had the 1,100-pound animal for about a year now, and today, JR will be one of 292 steers competing for the Grand Champion prize. The exhibitors are all 4-H and FFA students from across the state. Many have won ribbons and trophies at the county level. Only the best animals make it to state. There are 12 classes of animals, light, middle, and heavyweight, ranging in size from 845 pounds to 1,430 pounds. A champion and reserve champion is selected from each class. Then the grand champion gets the top trophy of the show. The judges select the winners on the basis of uniformity, leanness, and redness of meat. Rodeo officials say all steers will be sold at auction by Friday, except the reserved and grand champion animals. Officials say they'll sell for about $1 a pound, but the choice steer may sell for as much as $5 a pound. The money goes to the owner, like Miss Dassinger, who says selling JR will most certainly break her heart.
After you raise them and be with them so long, and then once they're gone, you kind of feel lost without them. So it's a lot of work and a lot of frustration, but I guess it's worth it.
Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
This mosquito spraying truck is sitting idle, and the director of the Division of Environmental Health at the County Health Department, F.W. Aldridge, told the City Council that the entire mosquito program is in jeopardy. Aldridge says the first phase of mosquito control, called larvicide, which involves the poisoning of the eggs before they're hatched, is currently being done by one crew, which isn't enough to cover the city and county's 113 acres of ditches.
We need funds to hire a mosquito larviciding crew. That's the first stage in mosquito control. And as yet, I've not been authorized to hire a crew to begin that phase of the program. Our adult mosquito control program would begin with the fogger unit that we have. As far as I know, we'll be able to operate this one unit. We had been asked by the City Council last year to put on a second one. Funds are not available to put on the second fogger unit.
County Health Officer Dr. Mary Dura says her office needs more money to purchase a second mosquito fogging unit, and she offered 3 possible solutions to the council. She says her department could use an increase in city and county funds, fire some health department employees, or charge fees for services offered. The council took no action on the question. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
There was a building of sentiment during the general session of the AEA, a sentiment described by incoming AEA President Thomas McDonald as a state of siege on education. McDonald told the group of teachers that the time had come to guard against underfunding of education, reduced retirement benefits, and proposed unearmarking through political involvement.
It will continue to be our role to oppose those who favor measures contrary to our beliefs as professionals and citizens, and to support those who advocate positions that serve to advance and defend the interests of education and all who participate in it.
Lieutenant Governor George McMillan gave the teachers no reason to think he was anything but a friend to education when he too called for more money for education and higher teacher salaries. And McMillan sounded like an educator as he told the teachers that he opposed taking money from education to fund improvements in the state's mental health and prison facilities. All of these, he said, are issues that will be here through the 1982 election. The fire of frustration in these teachers was fanned today, then directed toward tomorrow's speaker, Governor Fob James, who was booed loudly when his name was mentioned. Governor James probably shouldn't expect a warm reception tomorrow, as he presumably will try and explain to these teachers how education will benefit in the long run through his current proposals that would unearmark taxes and reduce retirement benefits. At the AEA convention in Birmingham, Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Jesse Jackson excuses no one for what he calls the moral and spiritual crisis in education. He says in order for children to get a good education, teachers and parents must form a partnership with each member doing his share.
They cannot manage children at 16 because at 16, people are no longer children. They had the option at 6 and 6 months. Those who make babies must assume the responsibility to raise them.
But Jackson says parents alone aren't responsible for the plight of education. He says teachers, too, must stop blaming outside forces for some of their own dissatisfaction with salaries, textbooks, and other things that provide the opportunity to teach.
There's an understandable obsession on the side of the ledger that talks about opportunity. Opportunity, opportunity. Poor teacher, poor blacks. Opportunity, opportunity. But I suggest to you as a fundamental formula that effort must exceed opportunity if change is to take place.
Jackson also condemns President Reagan's budget cuts, saying they use the poor as scapegoats and they put education lower on the national priority list. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News, Birmingham.
Watkins says he's not against this particular transaction, but says he thinks some type of procedure should be adopted. He says the city, like so many other legislative branches, is in a financial crunch and needs to maximize city proceeds. He suggested that the council place 4 basic components and ordinances governing this. Watkins says the city must declare that the property is not needed and advertise that it's for sale. He says the council, rather than the mayor's office, should see to it that the property is appraised and that a public auction is held with the floor price at least equal to the appraisal. Councilmember Alice Reynolds says Southern Bank's offer of $70,000 is more than the property's appraised value. She says she feels the city should accept the offer and execute the contract. Watkins then said he's not challenging the appraisers, but feels the city should find out if others want to pay more. After an unsuccessful attempt by Councilman Mark Gilmore to have the issue tabled for 3 weeks, the council voted 5-1 in favor of the sale. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
According to the indictment, there were some 655,000 cigarettes that showed up in Dale County in the possession of these 3 men, and they sold without paying the state or the federal taxes. They sold these cigarettes to various people throughout Dale and Houston counties.
The Alabama Education Association has been a powerful political force in recent years, though Jesse Jackson says Alabama teachers wasted many years fighting among themselves over racial issues. He encourages teachers to continue to fight for adequate funding and the right to bargain collectively, but he warns that they must not forget their primary purpose.
I'm glad you're learning to become good politicians, but be even better educators. Be even better educators. Good educators, by definition, are political. Political educators who cannot teach are not good politicians or good educators.
The human rights activist says teachers need to challenge the governor, the legislature, and Congress, but adds that unless the teachers group resolves its inner conflicts and closes the gap between educators and parents, teachers won't have the power to change things. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News, Birmingham.
Very difficult.
Mrs. Clara Potts Grimmett from the small town of Notasulga founded the Nathaniel Travis Activity Center nearly 8 years ago. Mrs. Grimmett says she started the center with hope, faith, and a syrup bucket to collect donations. Today, the daytime center receives state funding and serves 60 mentally retarded adults. It was because of her nephew, who was stricken by an illness that left him mentally retarded, that Mrs. Grimmett decided to start a facility for the mentally disturbed. Nominated by Tuskegee Mayor Johnny Ford, Mrs. Grimmett graciously accepted the Jefferson Award.
I present to you our 1981 Jefferson Award winner, and the medallion will be presented by the station Vice President General Manager Chuck Whitehurst. Congratulations. You certainly may.
First, giving honor to God, and He is the leader of my life. And then to the state of Alabama, the governor, and all of these great judges. And to Mayor Ford, which is my son, and my other people that came with me. I just want to say thank you, and I'm happy.
4 other honorees who received certificates were selected from over 130 nominations for the award. They're Emmanuel Blitz of Montgomery, Zeta Vaughn of Montgomery, Andalusia's Vivian Cottrell, and Charles Culp from Union Grove, Alabama. The surprise of the ceremony was TV12's nomination for Greatest Public Service benefiting the disadvantaged. It was given to Dr. J. Garrick Hardy. Dr. Hardy and Mrs. Grimmett will now be nominated for the National Jefferson Awards for their true unheralded public service that lastingly benefits the community. Kim Davis, WSFA, TV News.
FBI agents infiltrated the used car industry in the Middle District using informants wearing body transmitters. The investigation revealed widespread consumer fraud by some car dealers in numerous Alabama cities. Some odometers were rolled back more than 50,000 miles. 2 Montgomery dealers facing charges of 47-year-old Bobby Norman, the operator of Alabama Auto Auctions on the Birmingham Highway. He's charged with mail fraud by seeking title to a vehicle with an altered odometer. Federal agents say the car, a 1975 Ford, had an odometer rolled back from 96,000 to 49,000 miles. The other local dealer indicted in the case is 58-year-old Ken Krieg, owner and operator of this car lot at 301 Katoma Street. Krieg is charged with making false statements in connection with 2 odometer rollbacks, one from 73,000 to 47,000 miles on a 1976 Chrysler. U.S. Attorney Barry Teague.
We think this is just the beginning point.
How widespread is odometer rollback?
Well, we want to find out. We don't know at this time.
Are there people who just specialize in it?
Our findings so far show that some of these people indicted today were specialists.
We've been told by one person in the used car business that odometer rollback can also work in reverse. If a low-mileage car comes into the lot, for instance, and the dealer feels that nobody will believe the truth about the actual miles, the odometer is advanced. Testimony before the federal grand jury shows conclusively that odometer tampering is and continues to be a common practice in Alabama. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting.
The rising cost of utilities and continued proration of the Special Education Trust Fund has caused school officials to look for energy conservation methods. Right now, the county school board is in the process of changing old incandescent lights to fluorescent ones. The project is financed with a federal matching grant shared equally by the federal government and the county school board. Assistant Superintendent George Harris says the new fluorescent lights are more energy efficient.
The lighting is better. We have probably 15 to 20 more foot candles of light in a given area, and we are using anywhere from a half to 2/3 less electricity in order to get this much more light.
So far, Hayneville Road is the only school to have its incandescent lights replaced with fluorescent ones, and here at Bellingraph, the process is nearing an end.
Harris says when the workers have completed their work here at Bellingraph, they will go on to Lee High School. After that, he says other schools will be selected based on the need to improve lighting situations as well as energy consumption. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Well, I think that's highly possible. I think the county commission is in the process of trying to do something to relieve the overcrowded situation in the county jail. However, no decision has been made by the county commission at this point as to exactly what action we're going to take. One of the main problems we have is right now in the county jail, you have about 104 inmates who have not received any type of sentence. They are awaiting sentencing. And this is one problem that I think that the county commission really need to take a look at, is the system itself to try to do something to relieve this situation. The other situation we have about 21 people in county jail who are waiting to go to Bryce. And this is a problem that's compounded the original problem that we already have.
The idea of an air university goes as far back as 1910, when Orville and Wilbur Wright opened their first flying school in the area where the base now stands. 36 years later, the Air University was established.
When the Air University first opened its doors in 1946, its main challenge was the immediate use of air power. Air Force officials say today the challenges offered here are unlimited.
We're involved in a wide range of educational programs that starts from training of our junior enlisted people by correspondence to the introduction of second lieutenants into the Air Force, and ranging all the way up to our Air War College programs, where we examine aerospace doctrine and the employment of aerospace forces.
After 35 years of use, the university buildings are undergoing some repair and renovation. Authorities say the Air University affects the lives of half the Air Force population annually. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
Kevin Walsh is a teacher at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. He says discipline is a moral issue, that many children are self-centered and lack structure. He also says part of the problem is that many teachers have simply given up.
You know, schools are supposed to work wonders. We're supposed to solve racial problems. We're supposed to solve economic problems. We're supposed to solve... we can't do it in such a way that it will solve everybody's problems. And so teachers are kind of now, I think, at a low ebb saying, hey, you know, what are we really going to do? So I'm trying to put idealism back in them, too, that we can change children, and we can change them through discipline.
Walsh says consistency is a key to teaching discipline. He says teachers must get together and decide what the rules are and how they'll enforce them. He says it's normal for children to challenge authority, and teachers must respond to those challenges. But the one thing Walsh says teachers can't do is to ignore discipline problems. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News, Birmingham.
For 2 days, teachers have been waiting for Governor James to tell them about his proposed changes for education, changes that haven't been received well by these teachers. Outgoing AEA President Sarah Swindle even insisted the governor come out from behind the wings of the stage to hear her speech, in which she laid the groundwork for teacher frustrations about reducing retirement benefits.
We are hearing, thanks for a job well done. Now take a cut in the retirement you have been promised.
About unearmarking.
I ask how transferring funds away from a prorated trust fund will improve education.
And the teachers backed her with a standing ovation. Governor James, though, handed the teacher a red apple, then talked no more than 15 minutes about better management of available resources and making sure kids were taught to read and write, add and subtract. But the governor never defended the proposals most sensitive to these teachers. In a news conference later, I asked the governor why.
I wanted to talk to these wonderful teachers about the major components of education and how I saw their responsibilities.
There was reportedly an organized plan by many teachers to walk out on the governor when those sensitive issues were brought up, but it never materialized. What was expected to be a thundering forum instead became a cool, polite closing at the 1981 AEA convention. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News in Birmingham.
He was going to get his death bill through before this particular
health officer for the Public Health Service. Obtained a great deal of...
And Big Macs and French fries on the second go-round go...
I'm general program chairman for... Many of these teenagers have never owned anything in their life. And now they come around to the point and they say, for the first time in my life, I can have something that is mine and mine alone. And nobody can take it away from me. Now, don't worry about the consequences. That's something that is not faced up until a later time. But you don't consider those circumstances. And
Former Governor George Wallace's aide, Elvin Stanton, has confirmed the governor will marry longtime friend Lisa Taylor. But he says he doesn't know when the engagement was made or when the wedding will be. This will be the third marriage for Wallace. His first wife and former Governor Lurleen died of cancer in 1968. He married his second wife, Cornelia, in January of 1971. Then they divorced 7 years to the day after they were married. The divorce was a highly publicized, messy affair. Wallace, then 58, filed first, claiming complete incompatibility with his 38-year-old wife. Cornelia then countersued, charging that the wheelchair-bound Wallace had been violent and cruel to her. But now with Wallace's new wedding plans made public, Cornelia says she wants a reconciliation. She says she and the former governor talked last night about getting back together, but nothing was decided. In response to the governor's plans to marry 33-year-old Lisa Taylor, Cornelia says the governor didn't mention it to her. She says, quote, "You'd think he'd have had the decency to tell me before telling the media." Cornelia, however, refuses to comment on camera. The governor himself also refuses to comment on his wedding plans, saying through his aide that it's up to the bride to make any announcements. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Indictments are a result of a year-long investigation conducted by the Montgomery office of the FBI into consumer fraud within that industry. Their investigation focused on the odometer rollback aspect of the fraud. We found that the dealers were doing this all over the Middle District of Alabama. These 17 indictments involve owners, operators, and mechanics in Montgomery, Selma, Troy, Alexander City, Opelika, Phoenix City, Columbus, Georgia, Ozark, Dothan, and maybe one or two other towns within the Middle District of Alabama.
Went to the local Rotary Club. And these are matched 75%, and the federal law requires it to be eligible for that 75% matching money that you have to have state laws designating those funds to be used exclusively for good conservation purposes.
The bill sponsored by Representative Eric Cates will become effective in July. The shift in income tax collections will allow the state to collect 2 months of the last quarter's taxes this year, rather than saving them until the end of the quarter and having all 3 months' taxes turned in at the beginning of the next fiscal year. Education administrators are hoping the $62 million windfall will help make up for the bad economy and cut the 10% annual proration rate to 5%. But members of the finance department are afraid that businesses won't remit their income tax collections on time. The late fee is so low that a business can pay the penalty and still hang on to the money long enough to invest it at today's high interest rates. If many employers are late with their income tax payments under the new law, that $62 million windfall could be spread out over a long period, so that it will come too late to alleviate proration this year. What's more, if educators believe that money will be available next year, they may encourage their legislators to increase their appropriations to fit what they see as an increase in available money. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Besides the filed complaint, Phoenix City residents submitted a petition with 5,400 signatures. Most of the residents' objections are about losing touch with the phone company and not being able to pay their bills in person. Another complaint is that it would create a hardship for Phoenix City's older population. The phone company replies that it's taken advantage of computerized systems and advanced technology by centralizing its business offices in Montgomery. South Central Bell spokesman Tom Somerville says the consolidation will actually save the customers money and will not decrease customer service.
Most contacts with the business office are by telephone, and there will be a toll-free number for the customers to call. Some customers prefer to pay their bills in person, and we have locations, banks over there now that handle payments for us. We'll try to find more locations for the customers who prefer to pay in person. We will also have a location over there where customers will be able to come by and pick up their telephone equipment.
Somerville says union workers who don't want to move are encouraging the citizens' complaints. The PSC has given South Central Bell until March 23rd to respond to the objections. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
Conference participants attended 5 different workshops to discuss the most pressing issues facing the state's elderly. Issues like health care, housing, public transportation, independence of the elderly, and roles the church and synagogue play. Conference Chairman Helen Giese says state and federal funds may not be as abundant as they have in the past when it comes to solving these issues, but says there's still a few things which can be done.
We know that within our communities there are resources that have not been utilized. And when we get the people who have the problems and some of the people together who have some answers, then maybe we can solve some of these situations.
Mrs. Giese says she doesn't know what will come out of the 2-day meeting. She says participants were asked to bring possible solutions with them, so she expects some good recommendations. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Customer service charge.
The Power Company, Public Service Commission, and other parties asked the court to send the appealed case back to the PSC. Utility Attorney Jack Bingham said the settlement would clear the deck for another rate increase request. PSC Attorney Ewell Screws also signed the request, but the Attorney General's office didn't sign, but said they'd agreed not to challenge the settlement. But Robert Varley with Legal Services Corporation had stronger objections to the court's involvement in the settlement, but says he hasn't decided whether to appeal the settlement or not. Within hours, the court had remanded the case to the PSC, where Commissioner Pete Matthews and Commission President Billy Joe Camp signed the settlement order. Jim Folsom Jr. abstained since he didn't vote in favor of the settlement last week. The Power Company has been collecting the $122 million since last August. That means customers will get $17 million in refunds and lower rates.
It is a decrease. It's a $42 million decrease overall, and that anytime we can decrease by any amount, that certainly helps the consumer.
But Varley says the settlement is actually an increase since the Power Company started out with $30 million.
Now, this $80 million figure that is going to go into effect as of March 1 is $50 million more than what the Commission said that the company needed and deserved in that case.
The order takes effect March 1st, and refund checks could show up with your next power bill. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
In a 27-count indictment, the grand jury says Lewis aided the Snyders in an alleged scheme to monopolize equipment purchases by rural rescue squads.
The scheme consisted of Jesse Lewis providing inside information to the U.S. to Southern Ambulance. And based upon that information, they would go to local entities. The Snyders would send their sales manager to the local entity that had been given a grant or who had applied for a grant, and they would then carry out basically a scheme where they would get complimentary bids, and the scheme and the conspiracy would involve the ensuring that Southern got the bid and that there would be an artificially high price, and that's the basis of the allegations.
Jesse Lewis was the state's first black cabinet-level official and served in the last Wallace administration until he was appointed president of Birmingham's Lawson State College.
Federal officials say the ambulances involved included only those needed in rural areas by local rescue squads. They also say arraignment on all charges against Lewis and the Snyders is scheduled for March 23rd here at the federal courthouse before Judge Robert E. Varner. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting.
Governor James says it's easy to become discouraged considering the problems the country's facing. He says President Reagan undoubtedly has two major problems to correct. First, the fact that the elderly's retirement income isn't what it should be because of a weakened dollar, and second, that people in general are finding it hard to make ends meet. Governor James says this situation didn't happen overnight and was caused by politicians who promised too much.
Our government borrowed money by the billions of dollars, or either cranked up the printing presses in Washington, D.C., and by the billions and billions of dollars, they have almost brought the United States economy to its knees.
Governor James says he believes the Reagan administration is searching for ways to get the nation back on solid ground, but James says it must be done by trimming programs that can withstand financial cuts the most, and not benefits like Social Security, which the elderly have earned. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Outgoing AEA President Sarah Swindle spoke before the governor, delivering a blistering speech denouncing the governor's proposals to unearmarked taxes, reduce retirement benefits, and go without a pay raise. But Governor James responded with kindness and a mild speech that walked around the touchy issues and centered on the reasons for his proposals. He urged the teachers to keep up his war on illiteracy. He said he wanted better management of education dollars so teachers would be more effective in the classroom. Governor James left his prepared speech at that point to call reports that he is against higher education a lie of the worst sorts. He says he's only trying to reestablish priorities that were lost when the Education Trust Fund had surpluses.
And during that time, those surpluses expanded a system of post-secondary education to a point that today, to finance it, drives us to a level of mediocrity and not par excellence.
In a news conference later, Governor James did answer some questions about his unearmarking proposal, saying he had no intentions of taking any education money to fund prison and mental health improvements this year. As for next year, he says there would have to be surpluses before he would consider transferring Education Trust Fund money. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News in Birmingham. Although the report touches on the overall scope of the state's tax system, one suggestion backs Governor James's proposal to stop earmarking tax dollars. The report says earmarking restricts the state from shifting its spending priorities as the economy changes. Or in other words, as the economy turns sour, less tax money comes in, particularly in income and sales taxes. And because of earmarking, a pre-commitment to where tax dollars will be spent, the state has fewer options to spend what money is available where it needs to go. Earmarking is a touchy issue with educators, but the report isn't anti-education. It recommends more money for education, in part through cutting out duplication in higher education, as Governor James suggests, and through a change in the property tax structure. The report says changing property taxes would help the counties and cities foot a larger share of the cost of education. The study also says Alabama's taxes are regressive. The lower the income, the bigger your share of the tax burden. The solution suggested in the report sounds like another of Governor James's old campaign promises, a sales tax exemption on food and prescription drugs. Governor James's press secretary, Chris Benz, says he's not sure if the governor has seen the report, but Benz says he thinks the governor will be pleased with the similarities. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
As we tell the gospel story. See how many folks you can bring today, okay? The Neighborhood Bible Club. The Neighborhood Bible Club live today right here in your neighborhood. Starts at 3 o'clock right behind the Price Breaker. Right behind the Price Breaker. So come on out to the Neighborhood Bible Club. Bring all your friends. You'll have a good...
It's mainly geared for kids, but we've had probably 15 to 20 adults show up at every service. And so... but it's a gospel story. It gets kind of heavy. We have an illustrated sermon about the crucifixion and tell kids really what will happen if you'll let Jesus come into your heart. But we try to gear it on a kid's level, because mainly that's what we're trying to reach, because we found that kids are very open for the gospel.
The hospital here may not suffer, and the stockholders may be well paid for their stock, but the people of Alabama, the people of this area, are going to be the ones that will suffer if this company is allowed to buy this hospital.
If we turn over another health facility here in this state to Humana Incorporated, of what we know about their operations and their credibility, I tell you what, we're getting in real bad shape here.
The state filed its response March 9th, saying it has tried to reduce to 10 the number of its inmates in the county jail in a 15-day period. At one point today, authorities say there were 11 state prisoners in the jail, but attorney Richard Schimbaum, who represents the inmates, says the sheriff office has been working diligently to reduce the jail population and submit its report by today's deadline.
The sheriff's had a few prisoners that have arranged to make bonds. The Board of Corrections has arranged for the transfer of a few prisoners, and we've come down voluntarily through the aid of the Montgomery County judges to about a 150 figure today, which constitutes a voluntary release of a removal of 25 prisoners.
The county commission filed its response 2 days ago, saying that a combination of unusual circumstances and delays has caused the large number of county jail inmates. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
Let me say, there's always been a thought of mine, and I've forgotten who said it. But those of us to whom much is given, much is expected. Much has been given.
Since Wednesday, Talladega, Tallapoosa, and Clay counties have been under a fire alert. Today, 3 more northeast Alabama counties were added to the fire alert list: Jackson, DeKalb, and Cherokee. However, forestry spokeswoman Cynthia Page says dry conditions are worsening in the south and central portions of the state. Ms. Page says firefighters are having a difficult time fighting the fires in the northern sections because of the mountainous terrain. Yesterday, 145 fires reported statewide burned more than 8,000 acres of forest lands. Forestry officials say for the week, nearly 25,000 acres have been destroyed by 582 fires across the state. Forestry officials attribute some of the fires to arson. However, they say many are caused by careless landowners who decide to burn pasture land. A forestry spokesman says persons who need to burn must first get a free permit. Burning without a permit is a violation of the law, punishable by fine, jail sentence, or both. Permit information is available by calling toll-free. The number to call in the Montgomery area is 1-800-392-5679. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
Sure was. In the first go-round, he acted a little bit loose. I didn't really care for his run. But he come back.
Did you have any bad moments in that second ride when you scored the 75?
No, I kind of liked that pretty good.
The calves, did you decide which one you were going to cut before you went in, or was it just a matter of chance?
Well, I knew which ones not to cut, or thought I did. And just, you have to watch them cattle, and if one will set up and wait for you, you get him cut right, they'll last pretty good and have a pretty good run out of it.
So you had a good break that the cattle were animated and gave you a good work, huh?
Yes, sir.
The Chamber of Commerce says about 1/6 of the 50,000 people who attend this year's rodeo are from out of town. Chamber of Commerce spokesman Randy Rushton says the average tourist spends about $66 a day and usually stays 3 days.
$66.61 per day is spent in town by each visitor. Of that, 39% or $25.64 on the average is spent at hotels. Hotel restaurants 10%, other restaurants 16% of the money spent, and then retail stores gets about 10% and so on.
Rushton says conventions also have a large impact on the Montgomery economy.
Last year, we registered 69,540 delegates that spent $66 again per day. Average stay is 3 days, and this money on the average is turned over 7 times by the hotel going and buying bread and meat and so forth. So the impact of last year from convention delegates alone was over $97 million for the local economy.
And in the future, Montgomery is looking forward to more economic boosters, including the George Lindsay Celebrity Weekend in April, the Bass Anglers Classic and the Barbara Mandrell Benefit Weekend in October, and the Blue Gray football game.
It is not poor people's fault that America is no longer competitive in auto, steel, electronics, rubber, and textile. That was not because of bad workers, it was because of inferior managers. Managers who, when they made their money, bought machines to displace people and then invested their monies in foreign slave markets to undercut the American worker. And so I know we do need to tighten up our economy, but I think it is punitive and unkind to put this on the backs of poor people.
In talking to people in this area, I found that about half believe in psychic ability and about half don't. And of the half that do believe in psychic ability, there's a wide disparity in exactly what psychic abilities exist. So the first thing I asked Justin was exactly what his psychic ability is.
The realm in which I work is called clairvoyance or clairsensitivity. Actually means having a vision or a picture come to mind, and then elaborating to the client, the individual I'm talking to, on that picture. Clairsensitivity is probably the one that most people experience, the most lay individuals experience, and that is just sensing something, feeling it. You don't get a picture, you don't hear anything, any voices. You just know it's going to happen. You sense things.
Like a hunch?
Yeah, a hunch.
Well, you said clients. Now, do you do this for money?
Yes, I see my clients on a regular basis. Counseling is the area which I work in, is my expertise, or the one that I want to go in. Many psychics, you know, work on criminal investigations. There's other fields or areas they go into. Healing, working in the medical area, diagnosing illnesses. Mine is counseling, or counseling individuals.
Is there an organization of psychics in this country? Are you organized?
It's not particularly organized. There are a lot of associations, or let's say organizations that you can join. But actually to be organized, such as the AMA for doctors or something of that sort, no, it's not. I hope to see the day that it is, and that there's some ethical guidelines put on it.
When you're driving, I think particularly in the South, quite frequently you see signs of palmists who for a certain amount of money will read your palm and tell your future. What do you think about these people?
Palmistry as a science can be very valuable if the person using the art is talented enough to interpret the palm. But many times these individuals, their ethics aren't the best. When we get into the candle burning and that you have a curse on you and I can take it off for X amount of dollars, that's a bunch of bunk. I don't question anyone's talents. I may question their ethics or the guidelines they follow in their line of work, but only the individual can judge their talents.
When you're counseling a client, what kind of things do you cover with them?
You know, every aspect of a person's life you can think of, I've covered with a client. I can think of no area that I have not covered, from business into their marriage, their children, their education, sexuality, their religion. We go into all areas.
What are you trying to achieve in counseling?
Trying to achieve for them the best life possible by their own self-will, so that they can improve their life. Many people who come to see me are just confused in the sense that they don't know which direction to go. There may be several paths there that they have an opportunity to take, and I try to help them see each path clearly, what may be laying ahead in those paths that they would, and where those paths would lead them. So we go into everything, but it's basically to help you live a better life, or the individual live a better life with their own self-will.
Tomorrow night we'll talk with Justin about his predictions, both past and future, and particularly interesting, a prediction about former Alabama Governor George Wallace. Last night we talked with Justin about psychics in general and about some of his professed psychic abilities. Tonight we'll find out about Justin's personal predictions, both past and future.
My track record in predictions is probably 70%. I predicted the election of the new Pope, and on television after he was elected I predicted in Nashville, I predicted that he would not be of Italian descent, and he was not. He was Polish, which surprised everyone. The Muhammad Ali Spinks fight was another one. The Burt Lance scandal. I predicted that Spinks would beat Muhammad Ali. Well, an unknown. I didn't call Spinks by name. I just said an unknown, and he wouldn't hold the title long. That one came out. The Bertland scandal in the Carter administration. This kind of thing. A few of them.
All right, let's look at, from this point on, what are some of your predictions now for the next several years?
In the year to come, I'm predicting that the Iranian government will probably fall. We'll see the new Shah start his move back to the throne. I do believe the Shah will sit on the throne again. The economy doesn't look good to me until late '82, and I think the administration is going to have to change their policies, or will change their policies drastically before then to bring the economy into line. Racial riots. 2 years ago, I predicted that race would be a key thing in the 1980s. We would hear this word again and again. We thought we left it in the early 70s and late 60s, but I don't think we have. I think we're going to see this start up again in the next few months, even. I think an interesting one that last night came to me, this thing about former Governor Wallace. I don't feel that he will remarry, and I thought I'd throw that in for our local audience. I don't think the governor's going to remarry.
At any time?
At any time.
You don't think that either Cornelia and he will get back together, or the girl from Jasper?
I don't think Cornelia and he know, or this young lady from Jasper.
Interesting.
I think there's more behind this possibly than meets the eye.
What others do you have?
A Chrysler merger this year, and I don't think, I think the merger will start this year, late this year, and will end up next year, possibly, and finish out in '82. I don't see the company that Chrysler merges with as being an auto-related industry, which is strange, being an industry some other time. The nation, and this is one area that I don't even talk about with clients, and that is death. That's one area I usually stay out of with clients, but I'm predicting that the nation will mourn a former president's death in this coming year.
Can someone ask you a question about an area with which you're not particularly familiar, and you get an answer?
Oftentimes when I'm working with local press, they'll ask me about certain situations that I have no knowledge of, or don't know the individual they're speaking about or the situation, and I give them my immediate reaction or feelings on it. Sometimes I draw a blank.
Well, let's try one locally. Will Governor James run for re-election?
I don't feel that at all. I saw your governor on television last night, and I just don't see that at all.
You don't see him running again?
I don't. No, I think there's real problems there also.
Well, if Governor James doesn't run for re-election, who's going to be Alabama's next governor?
I get a small man. Now, I don't know who this man is. He's small, his hairline is receding, and he talks like a Baptist minister who's gotten wound up. That's all I hear is his voice, and his voice is very deep, and he has a very quick tongue. If that makes sense to you, you may place that on a man's face and his voice together, but he seems like a small man of some kind. I don't think he's a man currently holding any very high office in the state at all. The young man that ran for senator here the last time, the Democratic Jim Folsom Jr., his career is not at all over with. He is a voice to be reckoned with in this state. I saw him speak once in northern Alabama. This gentleman is a power to be reckoned with in this state. He's not given up yet at all.
Kentucky was in control most of the first half. A common sight early on was Sam Bowie rebounding, then dumping off to Dirk Minifield in the fast break. Even so, Alabama-Birmingham kept it close. And in the second half, begin to take charge. Back-to-back buckets by number 20, Oliver Robinson, put Birmingham up by 4. He would finish with 18. But the game-winning margin coming as a result of Glenn Marcus connecting on 8 straight foul shots in the final minute 30. Alabama-Birmingham upsetting Kentucky 69-62. Number 3 ranked Virginia returned some sanity to the playoffs with a 54-50 win over stubborn Villanova. Seen in white, the Cavs were led by number 50, game MVP Ralph Sampson. He entered the game with 17 points. Villanova's Stuart Granger paced the losers with 16. His jumper giving the Wildcats a 3-point edge at the intermission. In the second half, sophomore John Panone's hook inside the lane increased Villanova's lead to 7. But Virginia came right back. Jeff Lamp with 2 of his 10 points on the jumper, knotting the game at 44. 3 minutes later, Granger's basket with 34 seconds left pulled Villanova within 1 at 51-50. But Virginia held on to win it 54-50. Scott Murray for NBC News.
his evolution when the taxpayer pays the bill for a balanced curriculum of life. He identifies himself, reflects a partisan approach, and exhibits acute, powerful reason. Students would have available a realistic
doctor, then the intern is going to introduce a medical doctor, then the intern is going to introduce another. And we're glad to have Dr. Peterson with us tonight. And I'm going to ask him to go ahead and let this start. From the 1st grade through the 12th grade, how she may teach science. I'd like to read to you from page 3. American teachers have the responsibility of upholding human rights, among these being freedom of speech.
The skylighted area you see behind me is completed, and the and free library materials which are provided for the blind.
Talk to me without embarrassment.
It is fitting that Alabama's Regional Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped pay tribute to Helen Keller in this unprecedented manner, as she represents the standards of excellence for which all Alabamians strive. 1980 was the centennial year of the birth of Helen Keller, with 1981 designated as the International Year of the Disabled Persons. The International Year of Disabled Persons will provide us an opportunity to take part in a campaign to help the American public understand disability, to assist in ensuring full participation in society for all of our citizens.
Federal Judge Robert Vonner has a list of 50 inmates who are least deserving of incarceration. The judge received the list from the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office last Friday, along with reasons why it shouldn't be held in contempt for continuing to operate the overcrowded jail. Judge Vonner may decide from that list Monday which inmates may be released to help reduce the jail population, which now stands at 149, 4 more than the ordered maximum capacity of 145. The inmate's attorney, Richard Schimbaum, says the Sheriff's Office is doing all it can to alleviate the overcrowded condition, but Schimbaum continues to blame the County Commission for most of the problem.
I regret that this action is necessary, but I can promise the people of Montgomery County that unless they get on the County Commission to do something, this action will continue in the future.
However, County Commissioner John Knight says the commission is still studying ways to solve the overcrowded problem at the Montgomery County Jail. Kim Davis, WSFA, TV News. Both the artist and the model were present for the statue's dedication. In fact, model Debbie Deason is the same age as Helen Keller is in the statue. Clydetta Fulmer sculpted the blind Keller, reading one of her favorite books, Tales from Shakespeare. Services to the Blind State Supervisor Don Sims says because of Keller's great love of literature, it's befitting for the library to have the statue.
I found a quote that she made, which I think very much depicts what we're all about here today. And the quote is, "Literature is my utopia. Here I am not disenfranchised."
Former Governor George Wallace praised the late author's accomplishments and said he was proud to be a part of the dedication. Wallace himself is partially paralyzed from a 1972 assassination attempt when he was campaigning for president.
Her life has been an inspiration to both handicapped and non-handicapped persons because of her aspirations to achieve